Okay, just settling in to this moment and making contact here. Here we are existing in an interface, a place where the sounds that my lips and vocal box are vibrating are being met upon your ears, and your ears are transducing them into your brain signals with the intermediary of having been converted into electrons. And somehow we are having a shared experience of communication and understanding. And this linear means of communication, where we must start at one point and then end at another point, and along the way we must fulfill certain criteria in order to make it quote unquote make sense. This linear means of communication is all that we think of as communication right now. It's all serialized. But what we are missing is the holographic framework, the field potential behind the transmission. And so these sessions are my attempt to share some of my holographic field with as many people as are interested or called to listen, in an in-depth way, in an intimate way, in a what feels like a one-on-one way, right? You're the only one listening to this right now, and I'm the only one speaking right now. And I am passing on a fragment of my teaching to you, which isn't to say that I am elevated above you or that I am your teacher, but rather that we exist as separate nodes on this shimmering surface of the net of jewels, and we transmit teachings between ourselves from one to the other across the network. Right now, we are on the precipice of such a potentially transformational change in the way that each individual one of us looks at our humanity and our lives. And many of us are on the other side of this already and are ready to, we're reaching across, right, to help people align with the new way. And at the same time, there is so much distortion, and the old powers that quote unquote be the powers that have been are fighting so hard to keep the inevitable from happening. As we become more fragmented, more isolated, we are simultaneously becoming more connected and more interdependent. And it's a matter of which side of the weave of the cloth you're looking at, because we have the world ruled by Saturn, right? The so-called objective world, the world where 1 plus 1 equals 2, and stacking blocks, you stack them up and you can knock them down, and the building blocks of matter create everything. In this so-called objective world, we are becoming more isolated and more the system that has been ruling this world for so long is crumbling, is falling apart, is showing its decrepitness, its age, its lack of empathy. And to anybody whose perceptions are still solely limited to this world, it seems desperate. It seems horrifying. And it is, and it isn't, all of those things. Because just beneath the surface, when you peel back the top layer of reality, in which we all sit in our individual boxes and perform our individual tasks and have individual mortgages and rent and responsibilities, when we peel that back and we look at the whole from a zoomed out perspective in which we step outside of linear time, we see an organism in the stage, in a crucial phase in evolution. Just like when the first single cellular organisms came together to form tissues, biofilms, and then, tissues, and then specialization within, and then we get multicellularity. That transition is very akin to what we are going through right now with humans who are this fully individuated species. We have undergone the fall of man, which was the point where we became separate, the point where we lost our shared interiority, our psychic connection with everyone all the time. We lost that, and then we plunged into this world of individuation, of individualhood, of being in the world, being each of us experiencing the universe from our own perspective, from our own unique and absolutely different perspective. And we have built up such a diversity of points of view and ways of looking that we have created an infinitely more complex universe than ever could have been created before this fall, before this separation, this idea of the unconscious, the veil. And yet we're coming to the point where it has run out its useful life. But the veil conceals our hurts and the ways we have hurt others more than anything else. And that, the peeling back of that part and the work of introspection and atonement for all of the ways that we have hurt each other, both individually and collectively, is the most painful process imaginable. And it is what we are undergoing right now at this juncture in history. Because in order to become another an integrated whole, we need shared interiority again. We need to have the idea of an I, a self, that is greater than the individual human, that is more on the level of the collective. And in order to gain that on a more widespread basis, because this viewpoint is not new and it has been inhabited by many many individuals who apparently occupy human bodies, all of the great avatars, for example, that it will become accessible to everybody in this evolution. But in order to gain access to the fruits, the beauty, we have to be able to look at the shit. We have to be able to absorb and atone for all of our internal collective and individual shadow. All of our sins, all of our just all of our shit, right? So this process of breaking back down the veil of that, and not that it's going to be ever fully lost, but rather just tuning it, because the veil is this ever changing dynamic process that separates what we are aware of from what we are not aware of. In widening the aperture on the veil and increasing the number of possibilities of underlying reality that we can perceive, we have to perceive these parts that we have tried to bury and hide about ourselves. We have to come to terms with them. We have to make them we have to become comfortable with others perceiving them. And that's the work, that's the hardest part. And that is why this period in history is so painful and is so fraught and so difficult, is because we are in this process of collective self-awareness, up-leveling, and diving in and digging in and sorting through the contents of our unconsciousness in order to kind of clear these patterns and allow them to finally to stop creating more pain and more disconnection. So I have been working on the next month's issue of the Cosmic Research Journal, and I have an outline of where I want to go and how, where the story is gonna, how the story is gonna play out. But it's still in development, and I'm feeling in particular that treating it as a resonant teaching, as a body of work that has a holographic field underlying it, is the way to go, instead of trying to make it into an individual standalone journey. So this is really going to become the truth behind all of my work, is that I have like, I tried to be a humble person, and I stay pretty grounded, though I do, like, love to contemplate the mysteries and things like that, but not trying to brag about myself, but I have a very complete understanding of the Maya, of physical reality. Maybe not the most complete out of any human alive or anything like that, but from, spanning a wide range of disciplines and practices, I have really gained a very complete picture of how our bodies work, how our minds work, how evolution works, how DNA works, and how computers work. And how, I'm not as good at physics, but I'm getting there, right? How the universe, as we understand it, operates. And I say this not to brag, to say, oh, I'm so great because I've had this educational opportunity in my life, and I'm, but rather to offer myself as a beacon, as a lighthouse right now in these times where we are going through collective dark nights of the soul, collective disillusionment with the existing system, collective desire to build something better, desire to build something that has underpinnings of all of the ideals that we have always held to be our values and were essentially gaslit into believing were our values until we reached adulthood and saw the truth, and that those values were only for the few and never for everyone. And wanting to build a world in which the greater ideals can be extended to every single human, to every single conscious life. Right? This is the work. And so I offer these explanations and these contemplations and meditations as grounding for those who need them, as proof that you're not alone, that we're here together, and as a conversation starter, essentially, and as an offering to the world, right? This is my offering. I want to show you the world, right? The world as I see it, and then we can, because until we transcend this one-dimensional language, right? Because language is inherently linear. We start, we say the middle part, and then we end. But it contains these loops because time isn't linear, our brains aren't linear. The field is a holographic fractal. And by having to linearize what we say, we can only scan, and we can only provide a one-dimensional array of data. But the landscape we live in is many more than one dimension. It is more like 7 or 8 or 9. So by sharing these linear sessions in which I have been really kind of stacking in this the psychic holographic teaching. Not that I expect you to pick it up right away, maybe you do, but rather that it will help build on what I'm trying to teach and how I'm like the work that I'm here to do to help pull people who are desperately lost inside the matrix through that door, right? And just, even if it's only for a second, like just stick your head through the mirror, glimpse something on the other side, and then go back to your daily life, and then let that teaching drop into your body. Let that experience drop into your body, because it's something that can't be taught. It's something that has to be experienced. Yeah, that was a lot that I just kind of dumped. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to sit down, to be able to sit down to record tonight. Tonight is the 7th of November. And Uranus has just re-entered Taurus. And Venus is square to Pluto tonight. So we have the beginning of the end of Uranus and Taurus. This is the last few months of this transit for another 84 years. And it is going to be asking us to wrap up these phases of our life that has been the last 7-ish years, right? And Uranus in Taurus has been very destabilizing on the global scale, right? I mean, Pluto in Capricorn and then transiting into Aquarius is one way of looking at it, but Uranus in Taurus has been tearing up to shreds everything that we valued, everything that we found safety in, and everything that gave us comfort. And so with these last few months of this transit, it's time to integrate that that knowledge and understanding, and look forward to Uranus and Gemini doing the same thing, but to our ways of thinking, our ways of understanding, like our information gathering principle. And not to be all doom and gloom an astrologer, because I really am not. But Uranus in Gemini has always associated with major upheavals in the world. But if we look back on all of those, Uranus in Taurus set the stage for it very much. Uranus in Taurus gave us things like the Great Depression, right? I actually need to fact check that. That just flew out of my mind. I don't think that was true. Uranus in Taurus gave us I think it did, because if Gemini was 1940s, 1945, 1938, so stock market crash of 1929 was what kicked it off. That was probably Uranus and Aries. But yeah, Uranus and Taurus would have coincided with a lot of the Great Depression. So Uranus and Gemini can actually also, rather than being viewed as a something to dread, looking forward, looking back at things like the Civil War and the Revolutionary War and the World War II and all of these other conflicts, but rather looking at those turning points as when things started to get better, because they had been really bad for a really long time. May help to frame this upcoming transit. And you can, of course, many astrologers are out there giving you lessons about, how to integrate this personally. Go back and look at the sign and the house that the sign of Taurus occupies in your chart, and think about how this has looked for you over the past 7 years since, what was it, like 2018? But Uranus is not a personal planet. It's a collective planet. It's a planet of all of us together. And what we have, we need to be looking at these transits on a collective level as well. Uranus is also back in gate 8, out of gate 20, because the mutable signs are, the gates almost line up with the starts of mutable signs. It's like 7.5 minutes into a mutable sign is when the gate changes. So Uranus has been back in gate 8 for a few days. And so anybody who, like anybody who has any of the integration channels except for gate 20, and in particular gate 34, but not gate 20, or like you're going to lose this long-term transit of due energy unless gate 8 also lights up due for you right now. And even then it's going to change the character of your due. And this is familiar, right? This is, we had gate 8, Uranus in gate 8 for about a year already. And it's time to kind of look back and wrap that phase up as well, and take the learnings and take the losses and do what needs to be done right now. If you're like me, you have gate 1 hanging, then this is a direct connection from the G center to the throat, and that life path is that the role of the self in the world and the ability to express the role of the self in the world are crystal clear right now. And so it's a good time to steer your ship, right? It's a good time to make sure that you're pointed in the right direction, and kind of launch and go off into that direction. Yeah, that's kind of the transit of the moment. What's popping up? There's, we've got this long-standing grand water trine with Mars lighting it up right now in early Sag. We're going to get the sun. Mercury's going to hit it again twice more. So this is just going to keep getting triggered over the next few months until Venus passes through that point. With Saturn and Jupiter both stationary in this kind of lingering trine that does not reach exactitude because Jupiter just turned retrograde and Saturn turned direct, so not quite catching up yet until late next year. But the two planets are both nearly stationary at this moment, so there's this feeling of the tide is turning, and kind of feeling hope injected back into our veins directly, with the election results, I think, in a lot of the country, giving, the voice of sanity and compassion and caring about other people a big boost. And kind of realizing that we can't keep pretending like we're separate. We can't keep pretending that you're not the same as me. No, not the same, but you're not like part of me and I'm not part of you, right? That we're not both part of something much, much bigger than ourselves, that we have, we don't have any responsibility to anything other than ourselves. And I think if that, that's like the lesson of Uranus lingering and re-entering Taurus for the last time, of saying like, the last degree of Taurus is, I mean, you get like, the transition from Taurus into Gemini is one of growing very restless, and I actually am just undergoing this progression as my progressed moon is just transited from Taurus into Gemini. And so the late degrees of Taurus, there's like this like kind of deep feeling of knowing that you're not doing the right thing, but being unable to change, like knowing that you need to get off your ass and do something differently, but just feeling so stuck and so entrenched. And then as that, as the late degrees turn into the 29th degree, the 30th degree, that anorectic, that point right before the transition, that's when the momentum starts to gather for the change, right? And so Uranus is coming back into this degree, and I don't think it's going to go past the 29th degree. I would need to go in and look at an ephemeris, and I am not in a state to do that right now. But yeah, Uranus is coming back into the last degree of Taurus to say, where are you in your life becoming deeply restless? Where do you know that you have to change something drastically right now? And by right now, I mean in the next 4 months, not like today. But what is the thing that needs to shift drastically in your life between now and next summer, as we start to re-enter this world where we have not hope for things to get better so much, because that implies going back to the way that things used to be, but rather hope for things to crumble in such a productive and fecund and potent way that we can actually build out of that rubble what we want to have and to see. So, this is a time when we are truly examining, what do we want the federal government to do? What do we need the federal government to do? And at this point, the only thing that I can think of is fucking air traffic control. Like, that's about it, Like maybe some transportation budget, right? Like maybe some interstate highways, but yeah, I mean, that's just me. That's my perspective. But what are we gonna preserve from these periods of building these this empire in the three-dimensional world, in the Saturn ruled perspective. What are we going to preserve from that as we move into our holistic Neptunian perspective on things, where we see time stretching in multiple dimensions and we see ourselves as kind of standing wave nodes of places where we the image that's coming up for me right now is the 32nd and the 50th gene key, and those gates 32 and 50, those archetypes of 32 being the shadow of failure, the gift of preservation, and the city of veneration. And then gate 50 of the cauldron of shoot, I can't remember the gene key 50, but they're both related to what are we going to preserve and what are we going to let go of, right? And that's that late Libra energy. Of course, we're well into Scorpio season with the sun, but Venus is kind of going through this part of the zodiac right now, going through the late Libra, and Venus being the planet of our values, right? What are we going to keep? What are we going to let go of? And this is something that each one of us needs to really internalize and really allow allow these questions and these big questions, because each of us is a node in the field of collective understanding. So, what do you think is worth preserving from what we have from this world, this crystallized Saturn ruled experience of three-dimensional space-time and linear three-dimensional space and linear time, right? Because that's not that perspective of three-dimensional space and linear time is what is it has been our great laboratory for the last couple thousand years, but it was never meant to last, right? It was never meant to be permanent. It could never be permanent. Linear time, by definition, has a start and an end. And when we took to flesh, when we became human in the animal-bodied sense, in the sense of being set apart from the animals and being, God's embodied into solid flesh, instead of just light, instead of being merely luminous, but being hard, concrete. We knew that couldn't last forever, right? That because when you have solidity, when you take up space, there is a limit. And we became mortal because you can't have evolution, you can't have change, you can't have growth and not have death, because shit would get full. Like, there's too many people. You can't have, not just people, but like, we'd run out of room. And so in this quest for immortality, which fucking white men have been on this bullshit quest for as long as there have been, well, I mean, men have been on this quest for as long as there have been men. Not to say that no female has ever, but, you know, we see beyond the veil, we see beyond the illusion much more easily, I think. And we know that there's no, you can never have a solution to mortality when you're immortal already. Like, it's just, you don't need it. And some of the prophecies, you know, quote unquote, or small p, or whatever, like predictions that we have about this phase of evolution suggest that we are going to be transcending these heavy chemical-based solid bodies in the very near term, right? I don't know whether I believe that or not, right? I'm open to the idea, but also pretty solidly embedded in the matrix right now, having a life and an experience of being alive in this three-dimensional space and one-dimensional time, while also seeing that is not, that is, you know, it's a small part of all existence. But carrying with myself a deep hope and excitement for this moment where Saturn and Neptune start something entirely new at the beginning of the zodiac, at the point where awareness comes into form, at the point where eyes open, right? That's 0 degrees Aries. It's like the baby has been born and opens its eyes and looks around and looks at you and exists in the world as a new being. And so all this to say that I think that as Saturn and Neptune harmonize their waves, right, as their orbits come into connection with each other again for the, I think, 5th time since the discovery of Neptune, our perceptions and our world is going to be completely reborn. And I'm ready for it. I mean, obviously we've got a few months to wait, but I'm really excited. I'm excited to see what comes forth. And I hope you are too. I hope that you are finding hope and peace in these times, and I hope that you are finding support as you do the inner work, as you untie the karmic tangles that you came here to untie, that only you were able to come and untie. And yeah, I can't wait to continue to do the work with you. Thank you. I love you. And yeah, good night and good luck.